Stardom 101. Stardom 101. Stardom 101.
Stardom 101.
It's the Stardom 101 magazine podcast. Shining light on today's tastemakers
and innovators.
Kicking with your host, Christopher Boykin. It's the Stardom 101 magazine podcast.
Stardom 101 magazine podcast here on iHeart Radio. Thank you guys once again for tuning into us weekly as we feature the most prominent, talented people, individuals in the world. And today I have an author, a publisher, entrepreneur, a businessman. This man is doing amazing things. He goes by the name of Eddie S. Pierce Jr. Eddie, how you doing today?
I am doing great today, Christopher.
Yes. I like to, he's a fellow publisher guy, so we're going to talk some language. It'll probably be a little bit over your head, but we're going to get into it.
All right.
Because it's a different animal, Eddie, and you know this, right? Publishing is
but we know how to make it. We know how to make it plain.
Yeah. We ain't going to talk too much, but I want them to understand the power and importance of literature, that piece. I'd like to start off with you, Eddie, if we could. Your passion and love for literature and fine arts in general. I'd like to get a little backstory on where did that come from? Where's that stem from? Everybody has a why. I'd like to know where yours came from and what made you continue to do it to this day.
Well, it's easy for me to say, when I first heard the beginning of the question, my mind instantly starts saying, get the answer ready. I've been surrounded by so many creative people, pretty much all my life, born into a very musical family, particularly on my mother's side, but also a very encouraging family. And, here I am, 44, started writing as a hobby at 9.
Wow.
And I recently learned when I kept going back, because, there are certain things that come back to you the older we get. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that while everyone always encouraged my writing, I don't recall anyone saying, Eddie, sit down and write something outside of teacher. It was always born out of modeling. Honestly, I was the child that read the childcraft encyclopedias. I always go back to the myths, the folklore, the fairy tales, cultural things, raised in the church. So there was a lot of biblical influences, a lot of biblical allusions in my work, and comic books and cartoons. And in the last case, well, in all of those cases, but especially in the last case, imagine watching an episode of He-Man and She-Ra and not liking the ending. I would write it just so I could change the ending.
Oh my goodness.
And somewhere in there, it turned into modeling my characters after what I saw, particularly in comic books and cartoons and that sort of thing.
Wow. And this was as a child.
This was as a child. I actually, I was around a lot of very creative people, so I can only imagine where a lot of these other ideas came from. But funny story I love to tell is that I used to write the stories on college rule paper with the 3 holes, and I would take the twist ties from the bread wrapper or the garbage bag and bind it together. And I look back at it in recent years, even because I still have all of those writings, and I saw where I was making book covers and there was an imprint on the back. And back then I used to mess around a little bit with the illustrations.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. But, and then I would turn around and share it with my family. And my grandmother, we were talking about this even just yesterday, how she always told me back then, hold on to those stories, sugar, because she called me sugar. One day they're going to make us rich.
Wow.
And, and I'll never forget, we lost that binder at one point, and like everybody in 3 sides of the family was in an uproar, like, find it. Where is this writing? Well, we found it. So I looked up and I saw God was revealing to me, and said, you've always been this. It's just that now you're doing it in a formal sense and working to get paid.
Wow, that's amazing. And so we do have Rainbow Room Publishing, your company. Now, the vision and inspiration for your company, because that's a different animal. You just gave me the background story of you and where it comes from. I love to know, how did Rainbow Room Publishing come into play? Where did that come from?
Another favorite story I love to tell. The long and short of it is, and it
Uh-huh.
starts kind of tragic, but it ends beautifully. It even happens in the stories. There, I was diagnosed with depression some
Hmm.
years back. I think I was in high school when it first, no, I was in college when I was first diagnosed. And
Wow.
some time after that, maybe almost 10 years or so, well, let's fast forward to 2010, 2011.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I attempted suicide for the second time in my life.
Wow. Wow.
And long story short, went through the counseling, really came to terms with a lot of things. It was initially born out of my conflicts with being gay and being a Christian.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, I had always off and on by the time I became an adult, I didn't write as often. It was very occasional, maybe once a year.
Hmm.
And, prior to that, if I remember correctly, I was on a plane and this kind of happens in that first book, Love Something
Hmm.
Infinite. I was on a plane from Chicago to Las Vegas for an interview. I was working in higher ed. And because this was before we had all of the things we could do as diversions on a plane now, I was always the person on a road trip. Anyone in my family can tell you, Eddie always knew how to keep himself occupied. And
Okay.
so I decided I hadn't written anything forever. I'll try to write something. And so I started to fictionalize that trip. And
Hmm.
on the way there and on the way back, it turned into 20 pages.
Wow.
Around that time, I decided, hey, I need to. I had wanted to go back for my master's. I wanted a creative writing in
Nice.
master's in creative and fine arts and creative writing, and so that led me to Chicago State University,
Hmm.
where applying, I needed 40 pages of prose, and being the very practical person I was and am, I said, oh, I have 20. Give them 20 more. But I knew going into the program that I
uh,
needed 100 to write our equivalent, well, what we call a creative thesis.
aha.
And we actually presented and everything in a very similar way to defending the doctoral thesis. But so the formalized, what would you say, environment that I was in
Hmm.
really made me write. And honestly, the writing just kept on taking a different purpose and
Hmm.
growing organically and what it could do for me, what I could do with it. And by the time you get through rewriting and rewriting and rereading that for a thesis, you've seen a lot. And I
Yep.
said to myself, wow, writing this helped me. Who else might it help?
Wow.
And so somewhere in there, we collide with that suicide attempt. I'm in, the hospital. There's observation. There's
Mm.
therapy. At the end of therapy, I have resolved that I was going to do everything I needed to do not to find myself in that space a third time.
Correct.
And so writing, I went back to looking at my writing. And so if I remember correctly, the suicide attempt was June of 2011.
Wow.
November of 2011, I was ready to release my first book, Love Something Infinite, that fictionalizes some of all of that, including learning that I was HIV positive
Hmm.
around that same time that I was writing. And because the book came out, God, in a sense, said to me, even though I went through a self-publishing service,
Hmm.
God said to me, okay, well, you need a publishing company. You are the publisher. You
You
paid
are the
for everything,
publisher. There you go.
orchestrated everything. Even though you went through a service, the service did everything, including covers, but I specifically said, no, I don't want a cover that somebody else might get from you. I don't want them to confuse my book on the shelf with anybody else's. So
Understood.
aside from stuff like that, which they did, I did I got the photo shoot set up, and it's a longer story. We can come to at another time and a
Mhm.
follow up or something. But the people, I was living in Chicago. The people on the cover of the first two books are in Dallas. I had never met any of them, the photographers, anything. Everything was straight Facebook.
Mm.
And then look at God. Years later, I moved to Dallas, and I ended up meeting all of them. And
Wow.
we get to work on other stuff. But when the book was done, God said, you need a company. And prior to that, whenever I had get-togethers at my house,
Hmm.
and this was around the time that I was still kind of coming out of the closet to a lot of other people.
Hmm.
One of my closest friends, Yvonne Wimbish, soon to be Yvonne Carter, she would always say that we were getting together at Eddie's Rainbow Room, but it had that gay connotation more so than the
Ah, I
idea
see.
of the lounge. And she was always a very big fan of my writing before I published anything. And so when God said I needed a company, and I said, okay, there was no other name that came to mind. Rainbow
Okay.
Run Publishing just popped right up.
Wow, it's pretty.
And I keep laughing with her and saying I owe her a check.
I know that's right. Now, what's some of the services that you
I launched the company and released the book that November the 12th, which is actually also my birthday.
Nice.
Which marries everything. Not even more so marries everything, but I think illustrates how intricately weave together my art, my spirituality, my life,
nice.
My purpose and everything is.
Nice. What's some of the services that you offer, your company offers?
So I pretty much put everything in three larger buckets. What we call manuscript development. So that's your ghostwriting. That's your writing coach.
Mm-hmm.
Ghostwriting being the person that gets the writing together. We can take up anything that you've written. We can take up any audio, any video. Wow. I was gratified to have my first ghostwriting client a couple of years back. This would be Ronnie Smith with Miracles. The Tale of a Prodigal Child. I'm mixing up the name. Prodigal Child of God, Miracles, Prodigal Child of God. Mm-hmm. But that's the process that we went through. I was here in Dallas. He was in Chicago. And this is an elder without a lot of technical skill, no computer. And I say that all the time to say because he was such a star as the first client that if he could do this where he was, and I didn't know that I was constantly trying to give him insight to how he could do things easy. Yeah. I didn't know that he was taking himself to the library in the Chicago winter.
Wow.
Going to the library and to find the services that are there. To help him do some of the things he needed to do on the internet. But mostly that was because we were on the back end, the third bucket. I'll come back to it, but we were at the point of now we're putting your stuff up on Amazon so you can print on demand, you can sell. So he needed a little bit more help than I could give distance wise, even though we did videos and that sort of thing. But so he was the first and best example of the ghostwriting. And then the writing coach, we did a little of that towards the end. Mm-hmm. And so that's getting your manuscript together before we get into anything really being edited. Just, like I tell everybody, write the story. I'm sure you tell people all the time, just write the story.
Yep.
We can clean up, we can change, we can add, we can subtract.
There you go.
Write the story. Don't think about any of this stuff.
Right.
And until you get it done, is at least my advice. And so then you move into the second bucket, which is the actual publication and production of the book. So we have the manuscript. We take the manuscript, we edit the manuscript, we copyright the manuscript, we format it for the inside of a book, we design a cover, we go all the way down to the point where you have a mechanism to print the book, to sell the book. And that includes having a little bit of limited, kind of immediate PR as far as the book is done. And as I always explain to my clients, even though you potentially pay in that third bucket for a specified amount of time of PR, I'm going to pub the book just because it's my resume builder. It shows what I can do. So if nothing else, once a year on your anniversary or something, or relevant times of the year, that ad is going to pop up.
Nice.
And that's the segue into the third bucket, which includes things like that press kit, trying to seek out interviews such as this. And I'll be talking to you about, because I got a whole slew of people in this book we're going to talk about later that's ready to go. So it's everything in that case related to the idea of selling and promoting the book. That includes things like release events. I'm working on a couple of things for a couple other people. But probably one of my best examples, one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire career was that I had the opportunity to bring James Earl Hardy from New York to Chicago for a 3-day event. And when I tell you we covered the whole city,
Man.
He was on the north side on Friday with the Joe Hall dancers, for anyone that's familiar. Amazing, award-winning choreographer, dancer.
Yeah.
Then that Saturday, we went to the South Side, the Ubuntu Center of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of brothers that are a little more so our elders for the most part, but a lot of very intelligent, very insightful, predominantly older Black gay men. But they raved over it. It was an awesome experience. And then we ended things on that Sunday with at the St. Martin's Episcopal Church on the west side, where they have a large art initiative for the community. And so he did the presentation there. and we got him back on the plane. But, it was awesome in that it really, really, for me, that's one thing I love about this experience and why I keep going is that I constantly am seeing where God is not necessarily just increasing my territory, but making me aware of how large this vehicle is and how much it can carry.
Wow, that's beautiful stuff. Can you give me some updates on your latest publication?
Oh, so love to talk about this one. So from a Black perspective, The People, it's the second part of a 3-part anthology series featuring all Black authors. And as I explained to people, this is an opportunity, honestly, born out of another one of my personal dreams, to be a part of something like the Harlem Renaissance. And just that idea of here's this collective of people that have all this creative power and they know each other and they come together for one purpose and they stamp history with this monument of how great we are, not just at that point, but how great we would always be and how much larger we could go, kind of thing. Okay. And so this was born out of the idea that for me, Rainbow Room Publishing is the manifestation of really 2 dreams. I used to say a half and a half, but the first one being that I needed a vehicle to get my own work out. Because let's face it, I'm not Beyonce, I'm not Michelle Obama, and all of them. And so, Simon and Schuster, even though they all failing, ain't coming to look at me necessarily.
I know that's right.
Down the line. So I went the Jay-Z route and I sell my books out of the trunk of my car like he did his CDs to get started. Kind of thing. Exactly. And so the other half of that was now I have a vehicle. How many other people's voices can I get out there, particularly those underserved voices that are missing? And when I say missing, they are vital and they are absent from the larger global conversation. And so all of that turns into the idea of doing an anthology, turned into one book, idea of one turned into 3. And it's honestly been sort of a family reunion in that I love to say all the time, I love to use the analogy of playing spades. But imagine that all the cards are turned over on the top and you can pick the ones you want. And of course, you're going to pick all the trump cards. So I went back to my people that told me in high school I wrote something. I went back to my people in college. I went to the churches. I went to the community. I looked at the people I knew through Facebook. I looked at everybody who knew in the Black gay community. And that's how we even get to 3 books, because I cast a wide net. And even then, there's still people that just didn't come through. Not they didn't make the cut. They just didn't come through. And so, it turns into the first book, which is from a Black perspective, The Blood, which was released February of 2021. And it, in all cases, every book features a mixture of established or up-and-coming authors.
Nice.
And they're encouraged in all respects to promote all of their different good works. So when you get into the anthology, everyone has a 1-page bio of everything they do in the community, in the industry, in other arts, that sort of thing. But it was primarily designed to be a springboard, both emotionally, practically, and even financially, for them to get their own solo workout later.
I see.
It's down to the point that we share the rights to the work, so I don't just keep it. We all collectively share the books. We all have individual streams of income that don't crisscross.
Nice.
I published in the traditional sense, which was, another rewarding experience for me that, being a publisher, you pay for everything, you orchestrate everything. The only exception is them getting their copies of their books, but I set it up where they're paying like $3 or $4 for a book they're going to sell for $20.
Nice.
Even if they choose not to do that, there's a passive setup, and that is online at Amazon.
Understood.
So we get that book that turned into the virtual reading event where we just basically got up and it's kind of a graduation. It reminds me of me, quote unquote, defending my thesis at the end of my master's, where we do a reading, but then we take a Q&A, and it's full of all kinds of fun surprises from people that loved them that they didn't know that was sending video tributes, their prizes. And so it went over really well. And so here we are swinging back around from Black Perspective, The People, the second volume, dropped this February. We're doing that same event April 23rd.
Oh, that's coming up
this year. Yeah.
that's
and so it's this in less than 3 weeks. But it's so funny because we're so ready. We had an amazing rehearsal yesterday, so I'm like so not stressed at all. I made a joke all over Facebook about how I'm just trying to figure out what I'm gonna wear because they knocked the rehearsal out.
I know.
And to just wrap things up, because I feel like there's a very long answer. As I mentioned, there are 3 books. But the other thing to know is that we paired visual art. One of the writers, in fact, Senya Haynes, who has her own company, Palindrome Global Publishing and Events. I'm going to send her to you because she would be awesome on the interview. But she also does visual art, and she's the visual art on the cover of all 3 books. There's an eye motif from a visual painting, of a collection of paintings called Witness. And everything in the art, the inside and everything just celebrates all these different aspects of Blackness, to the point that the first book's primary color is red, and you might see where I'm going with this. Yeah. The second is black, and the third is scheduled to be green, so that when you put them up on your bookshelf, you'll have your Pan-African flag.
Wow, that's dope. That's dope.
And by the time we get done, we will have published a combination of 10 to 12, a mixture of first-time authors, as well as established authors. So it goes back to that thing of how do I get as many voices out as I can, especially thinking about the fact that it takes a little time to publish a solo novel for, that many people. But it's pretty much already in the works. All these people are either writing their full novel as a result of this. One of the people in the second one, quick short story, but amazing. She started writing and was going to that same publishing service that I went to way back in 2011. I guess she might have did it in 2012 or 2013, but the distinction was that where I was able to fictionalize my life, change names, and just go with it, they gave her some pushback and wanted her to get all these permissions from all these people that she knew was going to be okay with it. And so it frustrated her. All the more reason why that I want a company like Rainbow Room Publishing, because she got stopped for this very insignificant thing, in my opinion. And so when she and I started talking about this in 2021, when I wanted her to think about being in this second anthology, that's why I'm hearing all of this. And I said, well, look, Auntie, we can't figure that out. Give me a piece of that. Let's put it in this. You said you do this book, you do whatever you do with the money, and we figure out how to finish the full book. Now, mind you, the book drops February 15th. I'm up all night doing the things I do, a lot of stuff you do. And I see her YouTube channel, and she's promoting the book like all of them, are allowed to do. They're encouraged to do, but it's not required because it's just not everybody's wheelhouse. But in her video, she's talking about this book, but then she goes on to say how doing this book made her go back and make sure she got the other book done, which is always the goal.
Wow.
But never as quick as this, because in that same video, she put down the book we're all in, and she raised up the one where she had finished her full story. She published 2 books first time, 1 month.
That's how you win it. That's how you do it, Eddie. Speaking of that, win it, Eddie.
That's the quality of what you're looking at. That's the quality of what you're looking at in these pieces, the people that I'm working with.
Awesome. What's the best way for listeners to contact you for your services, my friend? You got some very intriguing services, some very strategic ways of putting voices out there, literally. So what's the best way for people to listen to you, contact you? Once again, representation. They want to do a consultation. They want your services. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, Eddie?
Everything is at www.rainbowroompublishing.com. Excellent. If you're looking for me on any socials, you can find it under that name. You can also find it under Eddie S. Pierce, pretty much all socials.
All right. Well, you got it, guys. Eddie S. Pierce Jr. is here. Rainbow Room Publishing. Like you said, check out his website. All of his information is actually going to be in the show notes of this episode. Clickable. Make sure you support what he got going on, his projects, his books. And if you're looking for an opportunity, Eddie's the guy.
Thank you. Let's tell your story. Let's go.
What's up? It's Stardom 101 Magazine Podcast. It's iHeartRadio. It's literature. Once again, thank you, Eddie, for joining us, giving us that refreshing information on publishing in the background of your vision, your story, and your journey. Continue to do what you do best. It's working. It's effective. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stardom 101 Magazine, guys. Be gone.
Are you on the rise to stardom? Well, get featured in the next issue of Stardom 101 magazine and promote your business or products today. Text MAG to 804-550-8647 or visit stardom101mag.net.
You're listening to the Stardom 101 Magazine Podcast with Christopher Boykin. Be sure to subscribe and download this episode, and continue to listen to Stardom on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.